Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Today we're going to explore precognition, cognizing the future. With me is my dear old friend Russell Targ, a laser physicist, author of many books, most recently The Reality of ESP, a physicist's proof of psychic abilities. Some of his other titles include Mind Reach, The Mind Race, The Heart of the Mind, Limitless Mind, and The End of Suffering. Russell is the co-founder of the remote viewing program at SRI International, a major U.S. military-industrial think tank. Welcome, Russell.
Happy to be here with you.
It's a pleasure once again to be with you and to talk about one of the most fascinating topics in the field of parapsychology, precognition. I know you have had some precognitive dreams that were very meaningful to you.
Yes, I have. I think precognition is the most interesting of the psychic abilities, and it may turn out to be that precognition is the senior ability that drives all the others.
I know our friend Ed May believes that that's the case, and I have a couple of interviews with him in the catalog about that topic.
I've had some dreams that seem quite illustrative of psychic abilities. In particular, they seem quite precognitive. Recently, I know that telling you a dream is like telling you my old acid trip. It's not so interesting. But some dreams about precognition just call for themselves to be related and explained.
Precognitions often occur in dreams. I think it's very significant.
In order to be worth relating, a precognitive dream has to be free of wish fulfillment and anxiety. For example, if I dream about failing an exam that I haven't studied for, that would not be a precognitive dream. That's just what you would expect.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if I have a dream that's quite unusual, free of anxiety material, and bizarre, unlike any other experience in my life, and I relate it to someone, then it might be a candidate.
Well, I think the fascinating thing about your dreams is that in advance of any confirmation, you sensed that this was precognitive for the very reasons you've just described.
Yes, I frequently have dreams at night and remember them. And I think the task of a dreamer, if he's going to do research, is to be able to definitively tell the difference between his precognitive dreams and his ordinary anxiety, wish fulfillment dreams. So that in order for me to get credit in the big book of precognitive dreams, I have to relate that dream to my wife, Patricia, before I tell it to anybody. So if I can't identify it for myself as precognitive and would have to wait for it to happen, well, that could happen a million times in a lifetime.
Yeah.
So a recent dream I had fulfills all of those requirements very nicely.
Okay.
So I had a dream that I had gone to the bank with my wife, and we were in the safe deposit vault where I've been one time when we opened an account. And in the dream, I was in the safe deposit facility, and I saw a bright silver faceplate of the kind you would put over an unused light switch. And I took out my Swiss Army knife and unscrewed the single screw holding this to the wall, and I put the screw in the faceplate in my pocket, and I left. But I was worried about being arrested for stealing something for the bank, of course.
Yeah. There was an emotional component there.
That's right. So in the dream, I went to the Golden Gate Bridge, which is 30 miles north of where I live, and I thought about throwing this loot overboard into the ocean, but I realized that this place is full of cameras, so I might be photographed disposing of the stolen faceplate. So I didn't do that. I said instead I could go home, go to McDonald's and wrap it up with a napkin. And I got to McDonald's and I realized I can't do that either because my fingerprints are all over it. So I decided to go home and scour the fingerprints off. So I washed the faceplate with soap and water. It was all in the dream.
Yeah.
And then I was worried that the oil for the fingerprints wouldn't come off. So I got some acetone and scrubbed the faceplate with acetone. And then I went under the sink to get a kitchen cleanser. And I was looking for kitchen cleanser. I woke up all on a Twitter from having this crazy dream.
It's an unusual dream that you would focus so much on cleaning this object.
Cleaning fingerprints.
Yeah.
Never had such a dream. That's the bizarre quality.
Right.
And unrelated to anything in my life. And I told Patricia about it. She said, indeed, that's a very unusual dream. And that was it. About 5 hours later, I got a Federal Express package. I opened it up, and inside was a thin glass plate that I had ordered to be the faceplate for my Apple iPhone Plus.
Which also is a camera.
Which is also a camera.
Yeah.
And I had forgotten about ordering. I had ordered that a week or 10 days before, and it arrived. And I pulled that out, and it's all full of warnings. Stop. Don't do anything further. Read these instructions. And the instructions were all about how to remove fingerprints from the thing you've just opened and from the faceplate of your cell phone. And they gave me 3 different liquids and an abrasive to make sure I get rid of every fingerprint, because otherwise the new faceplate won't seat properly. And before you do that, you got to watch a 6-minute video on your computer that tells you exactly how to make sure you've scrubbed off every fingerprint. And I realized that this thing is so fragile that because of my vision, this is not a good job to lay down this thin, fragile thing where they make sure, they tell you get only one chance to do this. So I asked Patricia, who is a clear-sighted woman, could you please watch this video and then help me scrub everything clean, which she did. She didn't got the packet 1 and cleaned it, and packet 2 and cleaned it, and then carefully laid down the faceplate. And I have that now, and that was just fine.
Well, so many elements of the dream actually occurred just unexpectedly and within hours.
That's right.
Yeah.
And in great detail. For example, I've never had a dream about fingerprints. I dare say very few people, unless you're a safecracker, you never can imagine having a dream all about fingerprints and stuff. So I thought that this was an unusually clear example of a dream in the evening being stimulated by events the following day. And I did not think that this was a precognitive dream. Never crossed my mind until later in the day I was reading a biography of Wolf Messing, great Russian psychic. And in this biography, it talked about him having startlingly accurate precognitive dreams the day or week before an event would happen, so that he and Stalin became friends, and Stalin would rely on Wolf Messing to give him information, even though Messing was Jewish and Stalin was very allergic to Jews.
Well,
it wasn't until I read Messing's biography that said, gee, this dream that I had last night is really a perfect example of that.
But when you told your wife about it early in the morning, at that point you thought it might be precognitive.
Of something.
Yeah.
That's right. When I woke up with the crazy dream, I immediately told Patricia I had a dream that really makes no sense at all, but is very accurate. It must be, I mean, if you could have a dream that's very accurate and anxiety-producing, and you say, yeah, I'm worried about the wheel coming off my car or something. This was unrelated to anything.
Yeah. It's odd in a way, though, because it's not as if cleaning off the faceplate is a very significant event in your life.
Well, it was anxiety producing because I didn't see well enough to do it.
Okay.
And I hate when that happens.
I see.
So I saw this quite large. In fact, a faceplate of a wall switch is almost exactly the size of the faceplate of the iPhone.
Yeah.
I mean, my subconscious must have dredged up stealing the faceplate from the bank as my subconscious looked for something the size of this piece of glass.
Well, you know, I'm reminded of a book you're probably familiar with by Dunn called An Experiment with Time.
I published that book with Hampton Roads as part of my series.
I didn't mention that by way of introduction, that you've actually published a series of classic books, and this is one of them. So he was an Oxford Don, as I recall, who analyzed many, many dreams of people, comparing the imagery in the dreams to events in the future and in the past, and he found that the future seemed to influence those dreams as much as past events.
I think so. I have another one like that, much simpler, but it has a nice quality. I live in a house with wooden walls and a pitched roof. In this dream, there was a small electric train, like a German Mark line train, which I don't own, running around a shelf built at the top of the wall.
Yes.
So it's sort of a cute idea to have an electric train running around your house just below the roof level.
Yeah. Kind of novel.
Novel. Yeah. Never seen such a thing. Right. And I told Patricia about it because it was very clear, unrelated to anything in my life, and I never heard of such a thing. I've never seen, my whole life, I've never seen anybody or anything with a train running around the top of the wall. Crazy dream. Very detailed. So I grabbed my coffee and went to my office, as I do, 8 o'clock in the morning, and the first thing I do is look at the New York Times. The New York Times is my homepage on my computer. So I turn on my computer, and there's a picture of my dream. I could ask you to guess how could that be on my screen?
Well, I have to confess, Russell, I know, because we discussed this a little earlier. We're talking about a renovation in your hometown of Chicago where they have the elevated railway.
That's right. Downtown Chicago, my father had his bookstore on the Loop. And there's an elevated train running in a circle called the Loop.
Yeah.
And it's 100 years old, and they're now renovating it. And on the New York front page, they're showing a video of the train running in a circle just as I had dreamt about it. And this would be meaningful for me, because I grew up in Chicago. I'm very familiar with the Loop. So I said, and I like trains.
And there are very few places in the world where they have elevated trains.
That's right, running in a circle.
Yeah.
So I thought that, again, I would have to assume that my dream about the train running in the circle was stimulated by my experience 2 hours later, 3 hours later, of seeing this on my computer screen. So both of these are examples of the future affecting the past.
Backward causality.
Causality
is one way to look at it. Or
the very hot topic in modern physics. There have been 3 conferences on retrocausality at the University of California in San Diego, because not particularly stimulated by extrasensory perception research, but because on the micro level in modern physics, there's more and more evidence that in certain cases, things occurring in the future can affect the past.
Well, I know one of the important principles in theoretical physics is symmetry, and the idea being that if time moves, or if events or particles can move forward in time, there ought to also be processes, waves or particles, that move the other direction.
That's right.
That would be required for symmetry, which seems to exist throughout the world of physics.
Well, it makes us nervous because it seems to interfere with our free will.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a dream about something occurring, does it have to happen? And my feeling about that is that you have a little bit of free will, but much less than you might imagine.
Yeah.
I basically, as a physicist, believe in determinism.
Mm-hmm.
If the wheel falls off your car, it's because the nuts came loose, not because of some psychic occurrence.
Yeah.
Now, if you dream about the wheel coming off the car, that might be stimulated by you're noticing that the nuts are loose or noticing that somewhere missing subconsciously. So I think that you don't have to have that experience. I think that you can use precognitive experiences of the future to avoid having the catastrophic experience that was signified by the dream.
Mm-hmm.
And we know of an example of that where on 9/11 there were 4 airplanes that were brought down or crashed as a result of the terrorists
hijacked
airplanes, and all of those planes had half or fewer of the normal capacity of passengers.
And that's one example of several others we could cite. Parapsychologists have looked at train crashes and have found that...
Sorry, William Cox did a similar observation of train crashes on the East Coast and discovered that even if you normalize them for bad weather or for holidays, trains that are going to crash have fewer people on them. The trains are not going to crash.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can't prevent the train crashing, but you don't have to participate in the experience.
Well, it certainly suggests that at a subliminal level, the human mind is scanning for possible dangers out there in the environment, including in the future. And no doubt the people who avoided being on those planes and trains were not even conscious necessarily about why they made those decisions.
Subsequently, a number of them were interviewed on they had a bad feeling that they just didn't want to, they don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't want to do that.
We call it a premonition.
That's right, or presentiment.
Mm-hmm.
Presentiment is a premonition of something, usually something bad.
Mm-hmm. Well, which brings up another whole line of research in parapsychology where stimuli are presented to experimental subjects and physiological measurements are made showing that the body can react in advance of the presentation of the stimuli, even though they're presented in a random order.
That's right. If you're going to hear a loud noise in the future, your physiology shows in advance that you're going to experience this loud, unpleasant noise. Your body knows that something's going to happen to you.
So it's very possible that this process, backward causality, is happening all the time around us. It's not just the occasional precognitive dream, which is very visible to us, but at a more subliminal level, we're always receiving influences from the future.
I think so, and we examined that in a controlled way at SRI.
Mm-hmm.
In our experiments, we had subjects in the laboratory describing where some other people were going to hide.
Mm-hmm.
And in one instance, I was sitting with Pat Price, who's one of our prodigious, successful remote viewers, psychic policemen.
Yeah.
And we're sitting in our little unpleasant shielded room, and Hal and Contract Monitor had gone to hide someplace. And Price said, I'd like a cup of coffee. We actually don't have to wait for them to get to their place and choose it. Why don't I just tell you right now where they're going to be in a half hour, and then we can leave here and get some coffee. And I thought that was a novel idea.
Uh-huh.
But he had shown himself to be remarkably psychic in earlier instances. So I say, okay, Pat, what do you see? He said, I see them going out on a pier. I see little boats with their masts stepped, and their other boats ready to go sailing. And off to the right, there's something that looks like a Chinese restaurant with lawn in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
So they've gone to some sort of boat dock near a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get out of here. And 45 minutes later, they'd come back. They went to the Redwood City Marina, which is exactly as Price described it. Little boat jetty with boats with the masts up and mast stepped, and not a Chinese restaurant, but a regular American restaurant, but it has a curly roof like a Chinese restaurant, and there's grass in front of it. And when I was in Soviet Union in 1983, the people at Yerevan, Soviet Armenia, who had replicated our experiments, a psychiatrist named Ruben Agazumsan, had done a whole series of many experiments, and said from time to time the person starts talking even before the travelers to the site. And I said, yes, we'd experienced that as well.
And of course, a true precognition experiment, the description is made before even any kind of flip of the coin or random process occurs to determine what the target will be.
Yes. We had submitted a paper to the Proceedings of the IEEE, the Engineering Society, and after long negotiations, teaching the IEEE editors, engineering colleagues how to do remote viewing and so forth, they'd agreed to publish our paper. It was really jumping through many hoops, but he said yes. And as we were typing up the final form of this paper, Hal Putoff and I realized, or I proposed to Hal, we're not talking about precognition here. You think that's too far out for the IEEE? I think we should include it because we saw it. And he said, well, we haven't done a formal study, but we were very confident that we understood what we were living in, a kind of psychic bubble at that time. In the late 1970s, every experiment we did was successful and significant and publishable. There were no missed experiments.
Well, you have this amazing track record that almost nobody in the field of parapsychology has been able to equal, so, which is one of the reasons I'm very pleased to have you here.
With a remarkable decade. So we made this amazing calculation working with Hella Hammett, the psychic photographer, control subject, my old friend. What is the fewest number of trials we could do to have a statistically significant outcome if she got all of them correct? So no rational scientist would ever design an experiment to choose the power of the experiment, the number of trials to do, assuming everything worked perfectly without errors.
Certainly not in the behavioral sciences.
And we said, if you did 4 experiments and all of them were first place match, the statistics of that would be 1 in 4 factorial, or about 0.02, which would be across the magical 0.05 barrier. So we signed up to do 4 precognitive experiments with Hella.
They all had to be first place hits.
That's right. And so I would sit down with Hella in our shielded room, say at 9 o'clock, and say around 11 o'clock, Hal will be somewhere. Right now, he hasn't arrived at SRI yet, but sometime this morning he will arrive, go to the safe, be handed traveling instructions, go someplace. But right now, here at 9 o'clock, I'd like you to describe where Hal will be at 11 o'clock and where you and I will be at 12. We'll go and visit the place. So just look into the future, and what is the unusual, interesting site that we'll all be visiting. And she did 4 of those, and all 4 were first place matched. Crystal clear, as though she was looking out of her psychic window, describing a swing set at a playground, a manicured garden, which happened to be Stanford Hospital, a muddy square in the water, which was low tide at the Baylands, and Palo Alto City Hall. So 4 quite different targets, all of them described with crystal accuracy, and we got to visit each of them day after the 4 days. No problem, no errors. All 3 hours in the future.
You make it sound easy, and I know that, it's for people who attempt to replicate this work, it's usually not that easy.
Yeah, I'm not conceding anything. That's the way our remarkable decade went.
Yeah.
And we published all of our findings and tried to tell people everything we knew about it. And the researchers, Professor Bob John at Princeton was able to replicate those quite well over a 20-year period. He did lots and lots of precognitive experiments.
Well, and the literature in parapsychology includes, it must be 100 precognitive experiments.
No, sir. We did not invent the idea of precognition, but we had a lot of it in our experiments, often under very good control. And then in 1982, as our work became more and more classified, I left SRI. It was no longer possible to publish anything. Not only our agreement was that we could publish stuff if it wasn't classified, but by 82 we couldn't publish anything. They just assumed this whole program is top secret.
Well, I know you entered into another great adventure in your life at that period, but we're running out of time right now, Russell. We'll have to come back and talk about your silver futures forecasting work, as well as some of the theoretical work you've done in complex space and how that relates to precognition.
Precognition is always into the future, isn't it?
Yes, I have to apologize to our viewers, but hopefully they will keep checking our listings so that they will catch further interviews with you, because our intention is to do quite a few more, actually.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for being with me, Russell. And thank you for being with us. Thank you.